Velthara stood in the docking bay of the Coalition starship Eternal Dawn, watching the human transport ship connect to their vessel. The sound of metal meeting metal echoed through the chamber. Velthara's four arms crossed in the traditional Cytherian stance of patient observation. This was going to be interesting. The transport ship looked different from other Coalition vessels. Where Cytherian ships were smooth and elegant, this human craft appeared rough and practical. Black scorch marks covered its hull. Dents and scratches told stories of many battles. It looked like it had been built for war, not beauty. Velthara had fought in over 200 battles across 17 star systems. The Galactic Defense Coalition trusted the Cytherians to handle the most dangerous missions because they never failed. Their four arms could wield multiple weapons at once. Their thick gray skin could stop most energy blasts. Their tactical minds could process battle scenarios faster than most species could blink. But humans were new to the Coalition. They had joined only 3 years ago after proving themselves in the Meridian Border Wars. The other species still whispered about how the humans had defeated the Skarn Empire using nothing but primitive kinetic weapons and something they called stubbornness. The airlock hissed open. A human male stepped through wearing the standard Coalition military uniform. He was shorter than Velthara, which most species were. His skin was pale, and his hair was black. Two small eyes looked directly at Velthara, without any sign of fear or respect. This was unusual. "Captain Lee Daeho, Coalition Marines," the human said. He extended one hand toward Velthara. "You must be Commander Velthara. I've read your service record. Impressive work at the Battle of Kepler Prime." Velthara looked at the extended hand. In Cytherian culture, warriors touched weapons before, touching each other. It showed mutual respect for each other's ability to cause death. But humans seemed to do this handshake ritual with everyone. "Captain Lee," Velthara said, taking the human's hand with one of their four arms. The human's grip was firm, but not aggressive. "I have also read your files. Your species has an interesting approach to warfare." "We do what works," Captain Lee said with a slight smile. "My team is ready for briefing whenever you are." More humans walked through the airlock. Velthara watched them carefully, trying to understand what made them different from other species. They moved with confidence, but not the arrogant confidence of the Zorathi warriors or the cold confidence of the Nexari assassins. There was something else, something Velthara could not identify. The first human after Captain Lee was a female with short brown hair. She carried an enormous weapon that looked like it could blow holes through starship hulls. Despite the weapon's size, she held it easily. "Sergeant Park Hyunwoo, demolitions," Captain Lee said. The female nodded at Velthara and grinned. Her smile was wide and showed many white teeth. She looked happy, which was strange for a soldier carrying enough explosives to level a city block. Next came another female, taller and thinner. She moved with the precise steps of a trained killer. Her eyes constantly scanned the docking bay, noting every shadow and corner. A long-range rifle was strapped to her back. "Corporal Kim Soo-jin, marksman," Captain Lee announced. This human did not smile. She simply nodded once and continued her visual scan of the area. Velthara approved. This one understood the importance of constant awareness. A young male human followed. He looked barely old enough to fight, with soft features and gentle eyes. Medical equipment hung from his belt instead of weapons. Red Cross symbols marked his uniform. "Private Choi Min-ho, medic," Captain Lee said. The young human stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Commander Velthara, it's an honor to serve with you. I've studied Cytherian physiology in case you need medical attention." Velthara stared at the young human. No warrior had ever studied Cytherian anatomy to help them. Most species studied it to find weak points to exploit in battle. This human wanted to heal, not harm. The last two humans entered together. One was a female wearing the blue uniform of a scientist instead of military gray. She had kind eyes and carried scanning equipment. The other was a male with grease stains on his hands and tools hanging from his belt. Dr. Yoon Ji-hai, xenobiologist, and engineer Nam Tae-sung, Captain Lee said. "They're not official military, but they volunteered for this mission." Velthara nodded to each human. Something felt wrong, but not in a dangerous way. These humans looked at Velthara like they were meeting a friend, not evaluating a potential enemy. Other species always calculated threat levels when meeting Cytherians. Humans seemed genuinely interested in having a conversation. The briefing will begin in 1 hour, Velthara said. "The mission is classified as extremely hazardous. Research Station Kepler 442b has gone silent. No communications for 6 days. Long-range scans show the station's defensive systems are still active, but no life signs." Captain Lee nodded. "Any idea what we're walking into?" "Unknown," Velthara replied. The station was conducting research on materials from the void sector. That region of space is unpredictable. "Unpredictable how?" Dr. Yoon asked. Her voice carried curiosity instead of concern. "Ships that enter the void sector sometimes return changed," Velthara explained. "Others never return at all. The few survivors report seeing things that should not exist, things that violate the basic laws of physics." Engineer Nam whistled softly. "Sounds like fun," he said. Sergeant Park laughed and patted her weapon. "Don't worry, Commander," she said. "We've handled weird before." Velthara watched the humans chat among themselves as they prepared for the briefing. They joked and smiled like they were going on a vacation instead of a potentially deadly mission. This behavior puzzled Velthara greatly. In Cytherian culture, warriors prepared for battle through meditation and weapon inspection. They focused their minds on death and victory. Fear was acknowledged and controlled. Honor was more important than survival. But these humans seemed to prepare by talking to each other about random topics. Private Choi showed Dr. Yoon pictures on a small device. She smiled and pointed at something. Engineer Nam and Sergeant Park argued about the best way to blow up different types of doors. Captain Lee watched his team with the expression of a parent watching children play. None of them looked afraid. None of them looked particularly excited about battle. They looked like they were exactly where they belonged, doing exactly what they were meant to do. Velthara found this disturbing in ways that were hard to explain. As the humans prepared for the mission briefing, Velthara wondered what they would do when they faced real danger. Would they maintain this strange, casual confidence? Or would they reveal their true nature when death came calling? The Cytherian commander had no idea that this mission would change everything they thought they knew about courage, fear, and what it really meant to be a warrior. The humans were about to show Velthara something that would haunt them for the rest of their long life. Something that would make them understand why the galaxy was slowly learning to fear the species called humanity. The journey to Kepler 442b would take 3 days through hyperspace. Velthara had expected the humans to spend this time like other warrior species did. Weapon maintenance, tactical planning, mental preparation for combat. Instead, They did. Something completely different. On the first day, Velthara found Sergeant Park and Engineer Nam in the cargo hold. They had taken apart several standard Coalition pulse rifles and were rebuilding them with human modifications. The weapons looked crude but functional. "What are you doing to those rifles?" Velthara asked. Sergeant Park looked up from her work. Grease covered her hands and she had a small tool stuck between her teeth. "Making them better," she said around the tool. "Coalition weapons are pretty, but they break easy. These modifications are not approved by Coalition standards," Velthara pointed out. Engineer Nam laughed. "Coalition standards were written by committee. Committees don't fight battles." He held up a modified rifle. The barrel was shorter and thicker. Extra cooling vents had been added to the sides. "This will fire twice as fast and won't overheat." "But it violates the weapon's original design parameters," Velthara said. "Yep," Sergeant Park agreed cheerfully. "Original design was stupid. This is better." Velthara watched them work. The humans modified the weapons with casual confidence, as if they had been doing this for years instead of days. They added parts that should not work together. They removed safety systems that prevented overloading. They treated thousand-year-old Catherian engineering like it was a child's toy to be improved. The disturbing part was that their modifications worked perfectly. On the second day, Velthara discovered the humans eating together in the mess hall. This was normal, but they were not eating standard military rations. Dr. Yoon had somehow convinced the ship's food processors to create human cuisine. "Commander," she called when she saw Velthara. "Come join us. I made kimchi." Velthara approached, cautiously. The food smelled strange. Fermented vegetables and spices that burned the nostrils. Around the table, all the humans were eating and talking loudly. "Dr. Yoon, how did you modify the food processors?" Velthara asked. "Nam helped me reprogram them," she said. "Try some. It's good for you." Before Velthara could protest, she had placed a small portion of the strange food in front of them. The Catherian commander looked at it suspiciously. The food was red and smelled like it was rotting, but the humans ate it with enthusiasm. Captain Lee noticed Velthara's hesitation. "It's safe," he said. "Human food is usually safe for other species. We tested it first." "Why do you eat together?" Velthara asked. "Military efficiency suggests eating in shifts to maintain readiness." The humans looked at each other. Private Choi spoke first. "It's more fun this way. We get to talk." "Talk about what?" Velthara asked. "Everything," Sergeant Park said. "Our families, our homes, stupid jokes, whatever comes to mind." Velthara sat down at the table, still suspicious of the food. "Do you not prepare mentally for the mission?" "This is preparing," Captain Lee said. "We need to trust each other completely. When things go bad, the best way to build trust is to know each other as people, not just soldiers." Dr. Yoon leaned forward. "Tell us about your family, Commander. Do Catherians have families like humans do?" The question surprised Velthara. Other species never asked personal questions. Warriors kept their private lives separate from their duty. "I have a mate and 3 offspring," Velthara said slowly. "They live on the fortress world of Kitharos Prime." "What are their names?" Dr. Yoon asked. "My mate is Zarthen. My offspring are Velkara, Velmina, and Velgoth." "Do you miss them when you're on missions?" Private Choi asked. Velthara paused. No one had ever asked this question before. "Yes," they admitted. "I miss them greatly." That's good, Sergeant Park said. Means you have something to fight for besides duty. The conversation continued for over an hour. The humans shared stories about their homes, their families, their fears, and their dreams. They spoke about Earth, a blue planet with vast oceans and diverse climates. They talked about foods and music and art that Velthara had never imagined. What disturbed Velthara most was how openly the humans discussed their emotions. Corporal Kim, the silent sniper, talked about how she missed her younger brother who was studying to become a teacher. Engineer Nam described his fear that his inventions might fail when people needed them most. Captain Lee admitted that he worried about making decisions that could get his team killed. In Kitherian culture, warriors did not discuss fear. Fear was acknowledged privately and overcome through discipline. These humans talked about their fears like they were discussing the weather. Yet they showed no signs of weakness or hesitation about the mission. On the third day, Velthara found the humans playing a game in the recreation area. They had created teams and were competing in some sort of strategic simulation. But instead of military tactics, they were building imaginary civilizations and trading resources. It's called Settlers of Kepler, Private Choi explained when Velthara asked. It helps us practice working together and thinking creatively. This has no military application, Velthara observed. Sure it does, Captain Lee said, moving a game piece. It teaches us to think about problems from different angles. Sometimes the best solution isn't the obvious one. Dr. Yoon was losing the game badly, but she was laughing. I'm terrible at strategy games, she admitted. But they're fun. Fun? Velthara asked. Enjoyable, Engineer Nam explained. Something we do because it makes us happy. Velthara watched the humans play. They competed fiercely, but without anger. When someone made a good move, the others praised them, even if it hurt their own chances of winning. When Dr. Yoon made a mistake, they helped her understand what went wrong instead of mocking her. This was completely alien to Velthara's experience. Kitherian training involved constant competition to identify the strongest warriors. Weakness was eliminated. Failure was punished. Only the most capable survived to serve in the military, but these humans seemed to believe that everyone could contribute something valuable, even if they were not the strongest or smartest. They supported each other instead of competing. They found joy in activities that had no practical purpose. That evening, as they prepared to drop out of hyperspace near Kepler 442b, Velthara spoke privately with Captain Lee. Your team is unusual, Velthara said. Captain Lee smiled. Thank you. I think that's a compliment. They show no signs of pre-battle stress, no weapons obsession, no aggressive posturing. Are you certain they are ready for combat? More ready than you might think, Captain Lee replied. Fear and aggression can make warriors unpredictable. My team knows who they are and why they fight. That makes them very dangerous to our enemies. Why do they fight? Velthara asked. Captain Lee looked toward the recreation area where his team was cleaning up their game. They fight to protect people who can't protect themselves. They fight to make sure other families stay together. They fight because someone has to, and they're willing to do the hard things so others don't have to. And you? Velthara asked. Why do you fight? I fight to bring them home alive, Captain Lee said simply. Every mission, every decision, every risk I take is calculated to give them the best chance of survival. Not just survival, but the chance to go back to their families and friends and the life they chose to defend. Velthara nodded slowly. This was beginning to make sense. The humans were not warriors in the traditional sense. They were protectors. Everything they did, from their strange bonding rituals to their casual confidence, was designed to make them more effective at protecting others. As the ship dropped out of hyperspace near the research station, Velthara wondered if this approach would work when they faced real danger. The humans claimed to be ready, but they had never faced anything like the mysteries of the Void Sector. Soon, Velthara would discover that human methods were far more effective than anyone in the galaxy had imagined. But first, they would have to survive what was waiting for them on Research Station Kepler 442b. The Catherian commander looked at the dark station floating in space ahead of them and felt something unusual. For the first time in decades of warfare, Velthara felt uncertain about the outcome of a mission. The humans had changed something fundamental about how they approached combat. Whether that change would save them or doom them remained to be seen. Research Station Kepler 442b hung in space like a dead insect. The station's lights were on, but something felt wrong. Velthara studied the sensor readings from the ship's bridge. All systems showed normal operation, but 6 days of silence suggested otherwise. "Docking bay is clear," reported Corporal Kim from her position at the tactical station. She had connected her personal equipment to the ship's sensors, somehow improving their accuracy. "No movement detected inside the station." "That's the problem," Captain Lee said. "A station this size should have at least 50 crew members." "Where is everyone?" Dr. Yoon looked up from her biological scanners. "I'm reading organic matter throughout the station, but the patterns are strange. The computer can't identify what species the readings represent." Engineer Nam was working on a portable scanner he had built during the journey. Power grid shows normal function, but there are some weird energy fluctuations in the lower levels, almost like something is drawing power in patterns that don't match any known equipment. Velthara made the final approach to the docking bay. The Eternal Dawn connected to the station with a soft thud. Atmosphere readings showed breathable air on the other side of the airlock. Temperature was normal. Gravity was functioning. Everything appeared safe. "Full combat loadout," Captain Lee ordered his team. "Stay together. Watch each other's backs. If something feels wrong, speak up immediately." The humans checked their equipment one final time. Sergeant Park carried her modified explosive launcher and enough charges to demolish a building. Corporal Kim's rifle could punch through armor at impossible distances. Private Choi carried medical, supplies, and a small defensive weapon. Dr. Yoon had her scanners and a basic sidearm. Engineer Nam brought tools and devices that Velthara could not identify. "Commander," Captain Lee said to Velthara, "you have more combat experience than all of us combined. If you see something we're doing wrong, tell us." Velthara nodded and activated their 4 weapons. 2 energy rifles and 2 plasma blades hummed to life. The Catherian commander felt ready for battle. The humans looked ready too, but in their own strange way. They were alert but not tense. Prepared but not aggressive. The airlock cycled open. The station's docking bay looked normal. Clean metal walls, proper lighting, standard coalition equipment. But the air smelled wrong. It carried an odor like burning electronics mixed with something organic and rotten. "Biological contamination," Dr. Yoon said, reading her scanner. "Nothing immediately dangerous, but definitely not normal station atmosphere." They moved through the docking bay in a formation Velthara had never seen before. Instead of the rigid military patterns taught by coalition tactical schools, the humans flowed like water around obstacles. They covered each other naturally, without spoken commands. When one human moved, the others adjusted their positions, automatically. The station's main corridor stretched ahead of them, lit by standard white lighting. Their footsteps echoed on the metal deck. Emergency exits and maintenance panels lined the walls at regular intervals. Everything looked exactly like every other Coalition research station Velthara had visited. Too quiet, Corporal Kim observed. Even abandoned stations have background noise, air recycling, computer systems, power fluctuations. This place is silent. They reached the first junction. 3 corridors branched off from their position. Signs indicated crew quarters to the left, laboratories to the right, and command center straight ahead. Split up? Engineer Nam suggested. No, Captain Lee said firmly. We stay together until we know what happened here. Command center first. They moved down the central corridor. The silence felt heavy, like a physical weight pressing down on them. Velthara's 4 arms kept their weapons ready, but the Catherian commander noticed that the humans had not raised their weapons. They remained alert but did not appear to expect immediate attack. The command center doors were open. Inside, the main screen showed normal status reports. All systems green. No alerts or warnings, but the command chairs were empty, and there were no signs of struggle. Dr. Yoon examined the control consoles with her scanners. Traces of human DNA on the controls, but it's old. At least 4 days since anyone touched this equipment. Personal items, Private Choi observed. He pointed to a coffee cup sitting beside one console. Still contains liquid. Someone left in the middle of their shift. Captain Lee studied the main display screen. According to this, everything is normal. Crew are all listed as present and accounted for. But the duty roster shows everyone working in Laboratory 7. Where's Laboratory 7? Velthara asked. Engineer Nam found a station map on one of the side consoles. Lower level, restricted access area. According to this, it's where they were studying material from the void sector. The humans exchanged glances. Velthara noticed that their casual confidence had shifted slightly. They were still calm, but now they were focused in a way that reminded the Catherian of predators preparing to hunt. They took the lift down to the lower level. The doors opened to reveal a corridor that looked different from the upper levels. The lighting was dimmer, and the walls showed scratches and scorch marks. The smell of burning electronics was much stronger here. Multiple weapon discharges, Corporal Kim observed, kneeling beside blast marks on the wall. Standard Coalition pulse rifles, but also something else. Something that burns through metal in ways that suggest extreme heat or corrosive energy. They moved carefully down the corridor. Laboratory 7 was at the end, behind heavy security doors that stood wide open. The door controls had been destroyed from the inside, as if someone had desperately tried to escape. Inside Laboratory 7, they found the first sign of what had happened to the station's crew, but it was not what any of them had expected. The laboratory was covered in strange crystalline growths. They emerged from the walls, the floor, and the ceiling like some kind of metallic fungus. The crystals pulsed with a soft blue light that had no identifiable source. They seemed to grow in patterns that hurt to look at directly. In the center of the room, surrounded by the largest concentration of crystals, were shapes that might once have been people. They were still vaguely human, in form, but they had been changed into something else. Their bodies were partially merged with the crystal growths, creating hybrid forms that defied biology. "Are they alive?" Private Choi asked, moving toward the nearest shape with his medical scanner. "Don't get too close," Dr. Yoon warned. "The crystals are emitting some kind of energy field. My equipment can't identify it." Velthara approached. one of the transformed crew members. The person's face was still recognizable as human, but crystal formations had replaced much of their body. Their eyes were open and aware, but they showed no recognition of the rescue team. "They're conscious," Velthara reported. "But they don't respond to external stimuli." Engineer Nam was examining the crystal formations with his portable scanner. "These aren't natural formations. The molecular structure is completely artificial, but it's not based on any known technology. It's like something tried to copy organic life using entirely different principles." "Copy organic life," Dr. Yoon repeated thoughtfully. "Or replace it." That was when the crystals began to move. The growths throughout the laboratory started shifting and reorganizing themselves. The blue light intensified, and new formations began sprouting from areas that had been clear moments before. The transformed crew members turned their heads toward the rescue team in perfect unison. "That's not good," Sergeant Park observed, raising her weapon. One of the transformed humans opened their mouth and spoke. But the voice that emerged was wrong. It sounded like multiple people talking at the same time, speaking words in languages that did not exist. "Contamination detected," the voice said in perfect coalition standard. "Sterilization protocol initiated." The laboratory suddenly filled with shapes that emerged from the crystal formations. They looked like people, but they moved wrong. Their joints bent in impossible directions. They walked through solid crystal as if it were air. And they all moved toward the rescue team with inhuman coordination. "Fall back!" Captain Lee ordered. But as they turned toward the exit, they discovered that more crystal formations had grown across the doorway while they had been inside the laboratory. They were trapped with entities that violated every law of physics Velthara understood. "Well," Sergeant Park said, checking her weapons charge, "this should be interesting." Velthara watched the humans prepare for battle against enemies that should not exist. The Cytherian commander realized that all their experience with conventional warfare might be useless against creatures that could ignore the basic rules of reality. But the humans did not seem concerned about fighting impossible enemies. They simply adapted their tactics and prepared to do what humans apparently did best: find a way to win against overwhelming odds. The crystal entities moved toward them with fluid grace. Velthara fired all 4 weapons at the nearest creature. Energy beams and plasma bolts struck the entity directly, passing through its body without causing any damage. The creature continued, approaching as if nothing had happened. "Physical weapons ineffective," Velthara reported. "Try this," Sergeant Park said, firing her explosive launcher. The projectile struck one of the creatures and detonated. The explosion should have destroyed anything within a 5-meter radius. Instead, the entity absorbed the blast energy, becoming brighter and more solid. "They're feeding on our weapons," Dr. Yoon observed, studying her scanner readings. "Each attack makes them stronger." Captain Lee made a decision that went against all military training. "Cease fire! Everyone stop shooting!" The crystal entities paused their advance when the weapons fire stopped. They tilted their heads in unison, studying the rescue team with expressions of confusion. "They don't know how to react when we're not attacking them," Captain Lee said quietly. "That gives us information." Engineer Nam was already working on one of his portable devices. "If they absorb energy, maybe they can't handle specific frequencies. Let me try something." He activated a device that emitted a high-pitched whine. The crystal entities immediately recoiled, their forms becoming less solid and more transparent. The crystalline growths throughout the laboratory began to pulse erratically. "Sonic disruption," Nam explained. "It's breaking up their molecular coherence." "Can you make it stronger?" Captain Lee asked. "Give me 30 seconds," Nam replied, making rapid adjustments to his device, but they did not have 30 seconds. More crystal entities were emerging from the walls and floor. These new creatures looked different from the first ones. They had learned from watching the rescue team's tactics and adapted accordingly. "They're evolving," Dr. Yoon said with scientific fascination mixed with terror. "Each new generation incorporates countermeasures against our previous actions." The newer entities were not affected by Nam's sonic device. They moved faster and showed more aggressive behavior. One of them reached toward Private Choi with an arm that stretched impossibly far. Corporal Kim reacted without thinking. She dropped her rifle and tackled Choi, pulling him away from the creature's grasp. As they hit the floor, Kim's hand touched one of the smaller crystal formations. The effect was immediate. Kim's arm began to change, crystal growths spreading up from the point of contact. But instead of transforming her into one of the entities, something different happened. "I can hear them," Kim said in a voice filled with wonder and horror. "They're not trying to hurt us. They're trying to save us." "Save us from what?" Captain Lee asked. Kim's eyes rolled back, showing only white. When she spoke again, her voice carried harmonics that sounded like multiple people talking at once. "The barrier is failing. The void is bleeding through. Soon, reality will collapse unless the infection is contained." "What infection?" Dr. Yoon demanded. "Life," Kim replied. "Consciousness, thought. These things are toxic to the pure mathematics of the void. We are antibodies, trying to heal the wound before it spreads." Velthara understood now. The research station had accidentally breached the boundary between normal space and the void sector. The crystal entities were not invaders. They were the universe's immune system, trying to eliminate the infection of organic life before it could spread into regions where life should not exist. "How do we stop it?" Captain Lee asked. Kim's crystal-infected arm pointed toward a sealed chamber at the back of the laboratory. "The breach point. It must be sealed, but the process requires organic consciousness to provide the mathematical framework. Someone must stay behind to maintain the seal." "Meaning they die," Sergeant Park said flatly. "Meaning they become part." "Of the barrier," Kim corrected. "Conscious but existing partially in both realities, protecting this universe from the void and protecting the void from contamination by life." The crystal entities had stopped their advance. They stood motionless, waiting for the rescue team to make a decision. Through Kim, they had delivered their message. Now they would accept whatever choice the humans made. "How many people would it take?" Captain Lee asked. "All of us," Kim replied. "The breach is too large for one consciousness to seal. It requires multiple perspectives working in harmony." Velthara expected the humans to reject this option immediately. No rational being would volunteer for exile in a hostile dimension. The logical response was to evacuate and let the coalition handle the problem with massive firepower. Instead, Captain Lee asked, "Would the seal be permanent?" "As permanent as conscious will can make it," Kim answered. "As long as we maintain focus and unity, the barrier will hold. But we would age differently. Time moves strangely when consciousness exists in multiple dimensions. Years would pass like decades." "But we'd be alive," Private Choi said. "Yes," Kim confirmed. "Alive and aware, but changed." Sergeant Park laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "So we saved the universe by volunteering for the worst assignment in history." "There has to be another way," Engineer Nam insisted. He was frantically working on multiple devices at once. "Give me time. I can build something that can seal the breach without requiring human sacrifice." "Time is what we don't have," Dr. Yoon said, studying her readings. The dimensional instability is increasing. Every minute we delay makes the breach larger and harder to seal. Velthara watched the humans discuss their options. They were debating whether to sacrifice themselves to save people they had never met, to preserve a universe that had given them nothing but conflict and hardship. The logical choice was obvious. Evacuate and let someone else handle the problem. But these were humans, and Velthara was beginning to understand that humans did not make logical choices. "I'm staying," Captain Lee announced. "That's not a request for volunteers. That's my decision as mission commander." "With respect, sir," Sergeant Park said, "that's the stupidest order you've ever given. We're all staying." "This wasn't part of the mission parameters," Velthara pointed out. Dr. Yoon looked at the Catherian commander with gentle eyes. The mission parameters were to investigate the station and determine what happened. Now we know. The next step is to fix the problem. "Even if it costs your lives," Velthara said. "Even if," Private Choi agreed. "Because if we don't fix it, the breach will keep growing until it swallows entire star systems. How many billions of people live in this sector?" Velthara calculated rapidly. "Approximately 47 billion sapient beings." "Right," Engineer Nam said, still working on his devices. "So we save 47 billion people by risking 6 lives. The mathematics are pretty simple." "It's not a risk," Captain Lee corrected. "It's a certainty. We go into that chamber. We're not coming out the same way we went in. But we'll be together," Sergeant Park said. "And we'll be doing something that matters." Velthara stared at the humans in amazement. They had just been told they would have to sacrifice their normal lives to save people they didn't know, and they were discussing it like they were planning a dinner menu. No fear, no anger, no desperate attempts to find alternatives. Just acceptance and determination to do what needed to be done. The crystal entities began moving again, but this time they were clearing a path toward the sealed chamber. Through Kim, they had received the humans' decision and were preparing to help implement it. "Commander," Captain Lee said to Velthara, "you need to leave. Get back to the ship and report what happened here. Make sure the Coalition understands what we did and why." "I am not abandoning this mission," Velthara stated firmly. "This isn't abandonment," Captain Lee replied. "This is completing the mission. Someone has to survive to tell the story." Velthara looked at each human in turn. They showed no signs of regret or second thoughts. They had made their choice and were prepared to live with the consequences, however long those consequences might last. The Catherian commander finally understood what made humans different from every other species in the galaxy. They were not stronger or smarter or more advanced. They were simply willing to do whatever was necessary to protect others, regardless of the cost to themselves, and that willingness made them the most dangerous force in the universe. Velthara stood in the docking bay of the research station, watching the humans make their final preparations. They worked with the same casual efficiency they had shown throughout the mission, as if sealing dimensional breaches was something they did every day. Engineer Nam had distributed modified communicators to each team member. "These should let us maintain contact even after we enter the breach chamber," he explained. "The frequency is adjusted for cross-dimensional transmission." "Will we still be able to talk to each other normally?" Private Choi asked. "For a while," Dr. Yoon answered, studying data from her biological scanners. "But consciousness will change when we become part of the barrier. We might think differently, communicate differently. We'll still be us, but an expanded version of us." Sergeant Park was dividing her remaining explosives among hidden locations throughout the station. Just in case something goes wrong and the seal fails, she explained to Velthara. These are set on dead man switches. If we can't maintain the barrier, the explosions will destabilize the local space-time enough to collapse the breach. Messia, solution, but it'll work. You would destroy yourselves to prevent the breach from expanding, Velthara observed. If necessary, Park confirmed. Better than letting the void consume the galaxy. Captain Lee finished recording his final mission. Report. Commander Velthara, this contains everything we've learned about the dimensional breach and the entities. Make sure the Coalition Science Council gets a copy. They need to understand that the void sector isn't empty space. It's actively hostile to life. Velthara accepted the data storage device. Captain, there must be alternatives. Coalition research teams could develop better solutions given time. Time we don't have, Captain Lee replied. Every minute the breach remains open, it gets harder to seal. In 6 hours, it'll be too large for our method to work. In 12 hours, it'll start affecting nearby star systems. Corporal Kim had recovered from her brief connection with the crystal entities, but crystalline patterns still showed on her arm. The entities aren't evil, she said to Velthara. They're just trying to preserve their universe the same way we're trying to preserve ours. The problem is that our universes are fundamentally incompatible. So you found a way for both to coexist, Velthara said. We found a way to build a permanent buffer zone, Dr. Yoon corrected. We'll exist partially in both realities, translating between them and maintaining the barrier that keeps them separate. The humans gathered in front of the sealed chamber that contained the dimensional breach. Through the reinforced windows, Velthara could see swirling energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. Space seemed to fold in on itself, creating geometries that should not exist. Ready? Captain Lee asked his team. They nodded in unison. No speeches, no dramatic farewells, no last-minute expressions of doubt. They simply prepared to do what needed to be done. Wait, Velthara said suddenly. Why are you doing this? You could evacuate and recommend long-range orbital bombardment. You could classify this as an acceptable loss and move on to other missions. Why sacrifice yourselves for people who will never know your names? The humans exchanged glances. Private, Choi answered first. Because someone has to. And we're here. Because it's the right thing to do, Sergeant Park added. Because we have the skills and knowledge needed to solve the problem, Engineer Nam said. Because every life in this sector matters, Dr. Yoon concluded. Captain Lee looked directly at Velthara. Because we're human. This is what we do. We see problems that need solving, and we solve them, regardless of the cost to ourselves. They entered the breach chamber together. Velthara watched through the observation window as they approached the dimensional tear. The swirling energy, patterns reacted to their presence, becoming more stable and organized. The crystal entities were waiting inside the chamber, but now they no longer appeared threatening. They moved with purpose, working alongside the humans to establish the dimensional seal. Velthara realized that the entities had been trying to communicate with the research team from the beginning, but species like Catharians and most coalition races could not understand their methods. Humans, with their strange ability to find common ground with anyone, had bridged the gap. The sealing process was beautiful and terrifying to watch. The humans stood in a circle around the dimensional breach, their consciousness somehow expanding to encompass both realities simultaneously. The crystal entities merged with them, not transforming them into something alien, but helping them become something new. Can you still hear me? Velthara asked through the communicator. Captain Lee's voice came through clearly, but it carried harmonics that had not been there before. "We can hear you, Commander. The seal is holding. The breach is stabilizing." "How do you feel?" Velthara asked. "Different," Dr. Yoon's voice replied. "Expanded. I can perceive both universes simultaneously. It's indescribable." "Are you in pain?" Velthara asked. "No pain," Private Choi answered. "But we can feel the weight of responsibility. We're holding back forces that could unmake reality itself. It's the most important job in the universe." Over the following hours, Velthara watched the humans adapt to their new existence. They remained conscious and aware, but they had become something beyond normal human understanding. They were guardians now, protecting two incompatible realities from destroying each other. "Commander," Captain Lee's voice said through the communicator, "you need to leave soon. The dimensional effects are starting to affect the station's structure. It's not safe for normal life forms to stay here long term." "What about supplies? How will you survive?" Velthara asked. "We don't need conventional supplies anymore," Engineer Nam explained. "We draw energy from the dimensional interface itself. We've become part of the station's systems, part of the barrier, part of the solution. Will I be able to contact you in the future?" Velthara asked. "Probably," Sergeant Park's voice said with a hint of her old humor. "We're not going anywhere. This is our post now, and we'll maintain it for as long as necessary." Velthara returned to the Eternal Dawn and began the journey back to Coalition space. Throughout the trip, the Catherian commander composed their report for the Coalition Council. "How do you explain that 5 humans and 1 scientist had voluntarily exiled themselves to an impossible existence in order to save billions of lives they had never met? How do you describe a species that treats universe saving as just another job that needs doing?" The report took 3 days to complete. Velthara included everything: the dimensional breach, the crystal entities, the human solution, and their willing sacrifice. The Council would need to understand that humanity represented something entirely new in galactic politics. When Velthara finally submitted the report, they included a personal recommendation that shocked the Coalition leadership. Humanity should be classified as the galaxy's specialists in impossible situations. Not as junior partners or probationary members, but as the species you called when conventional solutions failed and someone needed to do something that should not be possible, because humans had a disturbing tendency to make impossible things possible. Months later, when other dimensional breaches were detected throughout the galaxy, the Coalition sent human teams to investigate. Every time, the humans found solutions that other species could not imagine. They talked to hostile entities, negotiated with cosmic forces, and volunteered for assignments that should have been death sentences, and every time they succeeded through sheer stubborn refusal to accept that some problems could not be solved. Velthara never forgot the lesson learned on Research Station Kepler 442b. The most dangerous species in the galaxy was not the one with the best weapons or the strongest warriors. It was the one that would sacrifice everything to protect strangers, and somehow make that sacrifice count. The day Velthara fought beside humans was the day the Catherian commander learned that real fear was not the fear of death in battle. Real fear was the realization that somewhere in the galaxy there was a species crazy enough to care more about others than themselves, and in a universe full of impossible problems, that kind of crazy was exactly what everyone needed.